Excuse me, what exactly is that supposed to be, a costume piece? The words cracked through Courtroom 7A like a lash. Sharp. Smug. Judge Raymond Holt leaned in from the high bench, his robe wrapped around him as if it were a shield of authority. His eyes ignored the case file before him, fixed instead on the metal star-shaped, dangling from a worn blue ribbon resting on the chest of the man in the wheelchair. You're watching Stories Untold. Tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more hidden military stories. Sam Rourke didn't answer. At 82, silence had become his most reliable weapon. His hands, stiff from age and scars, rested on the steel rims of his chair. He sat steady, unmoved. The very picture of a disabled veteran who had already fought harder battles than this courtroom circus. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, bouncing cold glare off the emblem that Judge Holt had just reduced to a prop. "Sir, I'm addressing you," Holt snapped, voice rising. His gavel hand twitched impatiently, as if he could hammer respect into existence. The bailiff broad, heavy-set. The kind of man who'd been half asleep through traffic cases all morning shifted uneasily. The courtroom rules were clear: no hats, no sunglasses, no decorations. Holt's voice carried the smug finality of a man convinced his word was law itself. "Remove it." The young defense attorney, Alex Tran, shot to his feet so fast his chair squealed against the floor. His tie was crooked, his palms damp, but his voice carried a shaky fire. "Your Honor, my client is not wearing it as decoration. That medal is part of his identity. A recognition of I don't care if it's the key to the city." Holt interrupted with a dismissive flick of his hand. "This is a courtroom, not a parade ground. Remove it or be held in contempt." A ripple moved through the gallery, ordinary citizens waiting on traffic fines and petty disputes. Now, leaning forward, caught in the strange tension that hung over the room, they saw only an old man with a ribbon around his neck. But Holt's disdain seemed almost personal. Sam remained still, his face a mask of calm carved from stone. That composure only fueled Holt's temper. His voice sharpened, each word dipped in venom. "Did you hear me? Old man deaf as well as stubborn bailiff assist the defendant in complying." The bailiff hesitated, his boots scuffing against the linoleum as he approached the wheelchair. He stopped at Sam's side, his bulk blotting out the overhead light. His voice, when it came, was almost apologetic. "Sir, let's not make this difficult. Please." Sam's head turned, slow as dawn, his pale blue eyes locked on the bailiff's, bypassing Holt entirely. He'd seen this type too many times, men who mistook authority for honor, who believed a robe or a title meant wisdom. His voice, rough with age but steady as iron, broke the silence. "This medal," he said, every word deliberate, "does not come off." The judge's face went crimson. "That is a direct refusal of a court order." "Contempt," he pointed a trembling finger at the old veteran. "One last chance. Mr. Rourke, remove that trinket." The word hung in the air like a curse, and for the first time. The room itself seemed to recoil, as though everyone knew the next moment would change everything. "Remove that trinket, or you'll be escorted to a holding cell," Judge Holt barked, his gavel hand trembling with irritation. The word hit harder than any sentence of contempt. Trinket. For Sam Rourke. The courtroom dissolved in an instant. The sterile smell of disinfectant and old paper gave way to the choking haze of cordite and burning sand. His wheelchair, his age, even the cruel face of Judge Holt, all of it vanished. He was 25 again, bleeding through bandages that wrapped his torso like a patchwork shroud. The Ironveil Range roared around him, mortars thumping, radios crackling, the sharp snap of rifles in the night. 4 days without reinforcement. 4 days he'd refused to abandon 6 wounded Marines, dragging them from crater to crater, shielding them with his own body, calling artillery danger close on his own position just to keep the enemy back. On the 5th morning, smoke still rising from blackened ridges, a 4-star general had walked into that ruin of a battlefield. He'd placed the medal, the Valor Star, around Sam's neck with hands that shook not from fear but from awe. "Son," the general had said, voice heavy with the kind of respect you can't fake, "your country can never repay you, but it will never forget." The memory collapsed into the present, leaving only the ache of betrayal because here, in Ravenwood City Courthouse, the promise of never forget was being broken in front of a dozen indifferent onlookers. In the back row, a young prosecutor in a suit a size too big stopped scrolling his phone. Ethan Ward, son of a Navy SEAL, had seen that ribbon in photos on his father's wall. His eyes narrowed, then widened in disbelief. The pale blue ribbon, the 5-pointed star, it couldn't be mistaken. He leaned forward, heart hammering. The old man in the wheelchair wasn't just another veteran. He was carrying a piece of living history, the nation's highest combat valor award. Holt's insult wasn't just cruel, it was desecration. The bailiff lingered near Sam, visibly torn, while Judge Holt leaned back in smug authority. "Let the record show the defendant is refusing to comply. I am ordering a recess. When we return, Mr. Rourke will either be without that medal or in custody." The gavel cracked. Holt vanished into his chambers. The murmurs of the gallery swelled again, half gossip, half unease. Ethan Ward was already on his feet, slipping into the hallway with his pulse pounding. His phone nearly slipped from his hand as he scrolled to a number most prosecutors would never dare to use. When the line picked up, the voice was crisp, military, and commanding. Colonel Marcus Steele. It said, "Sir, this is Ethan Ward. I'm at the Ravenwood Courthouse. Something's happening, and I don't know who else to call." Words tumbled out in a rush, the arrogant judge. The wheelchair, the zoning violation, the medal dismissed as a trinket. Ethan's voice cracked as he forced out the name. "The veteran's name is Samuel Rourke." There was silence, profound, dangerous silence. Ethan thought the call had dropped. Then the colonel's voice returned, steel replacing warmth. "Say that name again." "Samuel Rourke." "Sir." A chair scraped. Papers scattered. Orders were already flying. "Where are you exactly? Which courtroom?" Ethan gave the details. "Chest tight. Stay there. Son, do not let that judge lay a hand on him. Help is on the way." The line went dead. Ethan stood in the hallway, breath ragged, realizing he'd just thrown a stone into deep military waters, and the ripples were already racing back toward Ravenwood. Ethan Ward stood in the courthouse hallway, his ears still ringing from the colonel's last words. "Help is on the way." He had no idea what that truly meant, but inside the Pentagon chain of command, the name he'd uttered was already setting off shockwaves. Colonel Marcus Steele didn't walk through the Army base headquarters, he stormed it. His stride was the kind that scattered junior officers and snapped conversations shut. He didn't knock when he reached the double doors of the commanding general's office. He pushed them open and stepped inside, face carved in grim lines. General Jonathan Drake, a 4-star whose calm presence was legendary, was in the middle of a staff briefing. The room stilled at Steele's intrusion. "Sir," Steele said, voice tight. "Apologies for the interruption. I just received a call from a trusted source at a civilian courthouse downtown. There's a disabled veteran being ordered to remove his medal in open court." The name he paused. Every syllable precise is Samuel Rourke. The name hit the room like a live grenade. The quiet murmur of staff officers cut off in an instant. Pens froze mid-scratch. Drake's expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief, then to something far more dangerous, cold fury. Samuel Rourke. His voice was low, gravel edged with fire. Sergeant Major Rourke, the Valor Star recipient from Ironveil. Confirmed, sir. Steele replied. Drake rose. The heavy oak chair screeched backward, shoved by the sheer force of his movement. That man is a living standard, the measure by which warriors are judged. And he's being humiliated over a zoning citation. His glare swept the room, daring anyone to contradict him. No one did. He snapped orders like thunder. Get the car. Fetch my Class A uniform. Colonel Steele. Assemble a security detail, 2 vehicles minimum. Every soldier in dress uniform. We leave in 15 minutes. The office erupted into controlled chaos. Phones lit up. Radios buzzed. Orders rippled outward across the base like shockwaves through water. The name Rourke passed from mouth to mouth, growing heavier with each repetition. For younger soldiers, it was like hearing that someone had spit on a monument. For older ones, it was personal because they'd grown up on stories of the Ironveil Range and the man who had saved 6 Marines against impossible odds, back in Ravenwood Courthouse. The recess ended. Judge Raymond Holt swept back into Courtroom 7A, smug satisfaction radiating from every line of his face. He expected to see an old man stripped of pride, perhaps already trembling from fear of the holding cell. Instead, he found Sam Rourke exactly as he'd left him, blue ribbon glinting faintly under harsh lights, the Valor Star still resting on his chest. Defiance written in silence. Holt's face darkened into theatrical rage. He leaned forward, voice dropping into a predator's whisper. I see you've chosen the path of foolishness. Mr. Rourke, you mock this courtroom with your stubborn pride. Bailiff, take him into custody. The order cracked the air like a gunshot, and just as the bailiff stepped forward, the heavy wooden doors at the rear of the chamber stirred, swinging open with deliberate weight. Judge Raymond Holt's voice cut sharper now, his veneer of patience stripped away. He will be held for 48 hours in contempt, and while in custody, I am ordering an evaluation of his mental capacity. Clearly, a man of his age who defies the court so brazenly may not understand the consequences of his actions. The words landed like a slap. It wasn't just punishment, it was an insult designed to strip Samuel Rourke of dignity, to paint his defiance as senility. Alex Tran half rose, his young voice trembling with the urge to object, but he froze. Any word now would be career suicide. And then, before Holt could gavel his order into record, the heavy wooden doors at the back of Courtroom 7A creaked open. They didn't slam. They didn't crash. They opened with deliberate gravity, pulling every eye toward the sound. 3 men entered. Not bailiffs, not deputies. Soldiers immaculate in Class A uniforms. Shoes polished like mirrors. Ribbons aligned with surgical precision. Authority radiated from every step. At the center strode a man taller, heavier with presence than anyone in the room. 4 silver stars glinted on his shoulders. General Jonathan Drake. His face was carved in cold fury, his jaw tight as steel. The bailiff, who had been reaching for Sam's wheelchair, froze mid-step. His hand fell away as if scalded. Silence flooded the courtroom. The only sound was the crisp cadence of 3 pairs of shoes striking the floor as they advanced down the aisle. They ignored Holt, ignored the gallery. Their eyes were fixed only on Sam Rourke. Drake stopped before the old veteran. For a suspended beat, no one moved, no one breathed. The 2 men simply looked at each other, one seated, weathered by years of sacrifice, the other standing tall with the weight of command. Then Drake raised his hand. The salute was sharp, perfect, reverent. His two officers mirrored instantly. 3 salutes, frozen in unison, an image of military honor against the backdrop of a courthouse that had failed it. The sound of their arms snapping up echoed like thunder. The gallery leaned forward, phones raised, recording what had instantly become history. Ethan Ward, still in the back row, felt his throat tighten. He had made the call, and now the army itself had walked through those doors. Judge Holt, from his perch, finally found his voice. It quivered despite the words he tried to wield. What is the meaning of this? This is a court of law. You have no authority here." Drake did not break his salute. He did not glance at Holt when he spoke. His voice filled the chamber with a power that brooked no challenge. "Sergeant Major Samuel Rourke," Drake said, each syllable like a stone dropped into water. "It is an honor to be in your presence." "Sir." He lowered his hand slowly, finally turning not fully, but just enough for Holt to feel the weight of his gaze. "For those in this room who do not know," Drake began, voice cutting like a blade through the silence, "let me tell you who this man truly is." And the air grew taut with anticipation, the crowd leaning forward to hear the revelation that would dismantle Holt's authority once and for all. It is not a prop. It is not a decoration. It is a symbol of a debt that can never be repaid. General Jonathan Drake's words cut like steel across Courtroom 7A. Gasps rolled through the crowd. People fumbled for their phones, not to text, but to record. They knew instinctively they were witnessing something that would not stay within these 4 walls. A tide of shame and awe washed over the room. Moments ago, they had watched a disabled veteran be mocked. Now they were realizing they were sitting in the presence of a giant. Drake's voice dropped, dangerous in its softness. To order its removal in a public forum is not just disrespect. It is desecration, not just to Sergeant Major Rourke, but to every man and woman who has ever worn this nation's uniform. Judge Holt sat pale and wordless. The robe that had once cloaked him in authority now sagged like a cheap costume. The gavel in his hand seemed like a child's toy. General Drake turned back toward Sam, but before he could continue, the old veteran himself broke the silence. Sam's voice was quiet, yet it carried the weight of decades. "Respect," he said, his gaze still fixed forward. "Respect isn't something you can demand with a robe or a gavel. It's not about titles. It's about what you do when no one is looking, how you treat people, especially the ones you think have no power." He lifted his eyes to Holt. Calm, steady, unyielding. "You asked me to respect your courtroom, sir, but you showed no respect for the man who entered it. There's a difference." The words struck harder than any ruling. A simple truth, sharper than all of Drake's fury, echoing into the silence like a verdict the judge himself could never deliver for a fleeting moment. Sam's mind returned to the Ironveil Range. Not the ceremony, not the medal. A frozen ridge. His rifle jammed, his leg burning with agony. Next to him, a 19-year-old private named Miller, shaking not from the cold, but from fear. Sam remembered laying a frost-bitten hand on the boy's shoulder. "Stay with me. Son, just stay with me." That was the true origin of the Valor Star. Not the fighting, but the staying, the choice to endure when everything said you couldn't. The fallout came swift. General Drake himself wheeled Sam out of the courthouse, a convoy of Class A uniforms flanking him. Outside, a crowd had gathered, drawn by government vehicles and the unmistakable presence of soldiers. News cameras swarmed. By nightfall, the story of Ravenwood's courtroom disgrace was everywhere. Within a week, Judge Holt was placed on indefinite suspension, the state's judicial commission opening a full investigation. His name became synonymous with arrogance. The city quietly dropped the citation and sent crews to tend Sam's yard themselves. The state bar rushed to implement mandatory veteran awareness training, whispered about as the Rourke rule. A month later, Holt found Sam sitting on a park bench under the afternoon sun. The judge was smaller without his robe, his face etched with something between shame and regret. "Mr. Rourke," he whispered, "there is no excuse. I was arrogant, I was cruel, and I was wrong. I am deeply sorry." Sam looked up, saw no triumph in the man's eyes, only fatigue. He gestured to the empty spot beside him. Hesitantly, Holt sat. Sam's gaze drifted to children playing on the grass. "We all make mistakes. The trick is learning from them. The uniform, the robe, the wheelchair, they're just things. What matters is the person inside. Don't forget that." Two men, different worlds, bound forever by one unforgettable afternoon. Because heroes don't always stand tall in parades. Sometimes they sit quietly in wheelchairs, carrying medals the world has almost forgotten until respect brings them back into the light. True respect isn't granted by titles or robes. It's earned through sacrifice, humility, and how you treat those who can't fight back.